Ryman Healthcare makes hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue every single year, and it's doing some kind of a public service by housing retirees in villages, like this one, albeit at a pretty high cost. But it's one of the worst performing stocks on the NZX so far this year. So how did something seemingly so good go so wrong?
So I think it's been a financial lens where it's been a disaster. That's a work in progress, Madison. We need to steer at that. We've grown overhead faster than we've grown resident numbers. So a simple person like myself doing that metric, that doesn't feel right.
For the first time, Ryman Healthcare's chairman Dean Hamilton is taking the time to talk publicly. While all smiles playing lawn bowls at a Ryman village in Auckland, he and his company had a lot to answer for. He's recently stepped into an executive chair role, filling the CEO vacancy left by Richard Umbers, who resigned effective immediately in March. The retirement village operator was once a market darling. Now it's one of the worst performing stocks of the year, down 37% or 76% from its peak. The company just reported a 98% decline in annual net profit after changing the way its properties are valued. It still has $2.5 billion of debt, despite just raising around $900 million to pay down expensive US debt obligations. Ryman's had a long history. It opened its first village in New Zealand 40 years ago. It's been listed on our exchange for 25 years. It now owns and operates 48 retirement villages in New Zealand and Australia that are home to about 14,000 residents. Ryman and the rest of the retirement village sector make money by selling the right to occupy units in its villages to retirees after they sell up their homes. On paper, those residents are occupants, not property owners. So when they sell, the operator, like Ryman, keeps all of the capital gain and charges occupants a management fee. Ryman's is 20%, lower than competitor Somerset's 25% and others with 30%. But that fee is now under review, one of many changes Dean and his refreshed board are implementing to try and restore investor faith in Ryman's ruins. Dean, thank you so much for doing this. I do really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
I'm going to let you kick this off.
Right.
Set the tone. What do you want to say to investors watching this?
Sure, I think it's been a big period of change for Ryman. When I came on board nearly a year ago now, it was definitely with the change agenda. You know, there have been strong messaging back from shareholders before we started around a desire for change in the board, a desire for change in management, a desire for the change in which we account, a desire for what we portray to investors. So there was definitely a big appetite for change. The business's performance had deteriorated over time. The share price had come down significantly, so it was kind of obvious to all that it was a change agenda. So really in the first 12 months has been doing a lot of those things, significant change. Half the board's changed, half the senior leadership's changed, and we released on Monday, last Monday, a new set of results and a new way of communicating with investors, which appears to have gone down relatively well. Analysts
have used words like disastrous. And that's just what they're putting in writing,
sure,
not what they're actually saying.
Sure.
How would you describe this, Dean?
Yeah, I think the financial performance has slowly deteriorated, a bit like I think being in a boiling pot. And then when you look at it 5 years later, you go, how did the business get to this position? And I think it's been a slow move across multiple fronts. They had an enormous development pipeline on, if you go back 4 to 5 years, 14 live developments across Auckland, primarily in Victoria, and I think when the music stopped in COVID and construction inflation took off, they were really caught with too much on their plate. I think quite simply. That led to delays, interest rates went up, so the cost of building those things went up, construction inflation went up. So of all the operators, Ryman had the most on their plate at that point in time. So I think that's taken 4 to 5 years to eat through, and we're still not through that yet. On the other side, when you come into a village, an existing village, kind of two things have happened gradually there. One, on the care side, so we do both retirement living and care at virtually all of our villages. We call it a continuum of care, so that people can move across and stay within the village as their health changes or their needs change. And on the care side, that has really the profitability of that has weakened over the last 5 years, whilst governments have slowly increased the rate, because that's largely government funded, and whilst the rates have gone up gradually, that's in no way kept pace with nurse and caregiver wages and salaries. So our margins, the whole aged care industry's margins have collapsed in that time. And you'll see the last Labor government have started a review. That's been carried on by the new government, and 2 Fridays ago this government said they're going to review aged care funding. So I think they realise that piece is broken. Beds are closing, not obviously in the large operators, but in the small single operators they're closing. People aren't building much more care. At the same time, you've got a wave of older people demographically happening. That's kind of undeniable. So I think the government's realising if they don't solve the aged care piece, it'll become a hospital piece, and that's not what they want, because if they can't turn up here, they'll turn up there at 4 times the cost of turning up to here. So I think that's dawning on them, but we've suffered through that, as the whole aged care industry has. The other piece of when you see a village is the retirement part of the village, where people come in at a younger age, they're independently living. What's happened there is that we charge weekly fees to cover all the outgoings. What's happened, and we fix that for life, so to give surety for people. What's happened is huge increases in insurance, huge increases in rates, electricity, just the cost of getting a plumber in. So those weekly costs have not kept up, or they've gone past what the residents are paying us. And when you fix that for life, there's no way to climb back into that. That's a contractual commitment we've made. So I kind of talk about the 3 flywheels. Those three flywheels came unstuck with Ryman, slowly in part, and then when you actually unveil 5 years later, everyone goes, when did that happen? And in reality, that was happening. And I think the kind of equity market realised that 3 years ago when the share price started weakening, and it's continued to kind of, as we've exposed this, they're saying, okay, I get that now. It's kind of time to draw a line in the sand. How do we improve from here? So it's been a kind of a gradual, I don't think everyone woke up and Ryman became a poor financial performer. So I think it's been a financial lens where it's been a disaster. If you asked our residents, they're still delighted with our care and their, which is fundamental. If we make a mistake there, that's far different from making a financial mistake. We can fix this piece, you can't fix that reputational piece. So we're still scoring high in terms of resident NPS, their families, we're full. So that part of the business is going well. It's just the financial performance piece has slowly deteriorated, and we have to turn that quickly.
But you can't provide quality of care if you're not a viable commercial operation.
Yes.
So is the latter now the more immediate focus?
Yes, I think they have to coexist. We talk about great care and great financial performance. It has become unbalanced, and I don't think you have to take that away to get that, because ultimately that's not sustainable either. Great financial performance and you're empty. That's not right either.
Well, you wouldn't have great financial performance if you were empty, correct?
Good clarification. So I think ultimately we need to be balanced. How do we have great care, maintain our great care, and deliver great financial performance? And that's how Ryman used to be, and we have to get that back to that level.
On the government stuff, that is one thing that you obviously can't control. Yes. There is still a lot, as you mentioned, with fees within your control, and I am going to ask you about your thoughts on that a little bit later on, and also the mix of offering with care. But if we can start at a pretty high level and look at the business model, there's actually not much wrong with it on paper. It's obviously pretty lucrative. I mean, the way it works is that you will build villages like this one, you'll sell the right to occupy those units, then also resell them to new residents when the others pass on. You clip the ticket on all of those capital gains. Yep. It's worked once before, you were a market darling, it's obviously still working for other operators in this industry. But why did this company feel the need to leverage up so heavily and take on billions of dollars in debt when it was obviously already so lucrative?
Sure. I think there was a huge drive for growth. The DNA of the place was all about 15% growth. It was a kind of a mantra when you walk in. And that kind of works till it doesn't. If you think about 15% compounding, the number gets very big very quick. And so ultimately, to keep up that level of growth, you take on more risk, you want to build more villages, and so those things ultimately work until they don't. And so the numbers got so big, at the peak we had 14 villages under construction, like it was enormous, probably aiming for over 1,000 units and beds a year. And that just ultimately got beyond the capability of the organisation. So I kind of like to say it worked till it didn't.
Analysts sounded the alarm on this as early as around 2018, if not earlier. In 2019, I wrote an article based off their research that said that Ryman was one retirement village operator on death row. I've been doing this show for a little over a year now, and this is the second time I've had a high-level Ryman exec
Yes.
come on and have to have a mea culpa moment.
Sure.
Why should investors still have faith in this company, Dean?
Yeah, no, that's a valid question. I think at the end of the day, we have a great reputation amongst residents, which is fundamental. We rate the highest in New Zealand. Reader's Digest rate that we've got the highest corporate trust, highest community trust in our brand, and so we know that piece. We do very, very well. So I think investors get that. If that was crumbling, I think investors will be very nervous. I think they have to gain confidence in the board. They had lost confidence in the board and management, so we've kind of changed that. And I think they're reading that this board is putting much more urgency into that change, maybe more so than they saw 2 years ago or even 1 year ago. So we left them with no uncertainty about that appetite. And even as we look for a new CEO and I'm temporarily in that seat, we're not going to sit idle. We know what we need to do and we're kind of leaning into it. And that's certainly been the message we've been delivering to investors. And you can deliver that and then they're going to watch you, show me, don't tell me. So we're kind of in that mode now. We kind of put the line in the sand 2 Mondays ago with that reveal. And I think they will give us a period of time to demonstrate that.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing, because as you mentioned, the cleanup is absolutely underway. On the valuation of assets, you've reverted back to the old way of doing things, looking at market rates. Can you talk me through that decision, how that was made?
Sure. So for a long period of time, it was independent valuation. These are large assets. We've got $12 billion worth of assets across New Zealand and Australia. Industry norm is to use external values, which is, if you look at Kiwi property, everyone uses external values. So that's the appropriate thing to do. So we do that to value our retirement villages and the care piece, because they've got quite different dynamics. So we get different valuers to value both pieces and add it together to create the village. And then a few years ago, directors came and said, well, they took a view that said, hey, we believe under fair value, you have to use a market participant test. It's a very technical point. And their view, a market participant would change the way in which you priced the occupational right.
Which effectively inflated the value of their assets on paper and made them look pretty good, right?
It did.
Was that financial mismanagement, do you think?
These things aren't policy, they're judgment. At the time they did that, shareholders' equity would have been over $4 billion. At the time it would have changed the value by taking the independent valuer's approach and then layering above that a 30% DMF for future residents, not the current 20. That created at the time about $300 million of additional equity on $4 billion. So it's not like you trebled the size of it. Did that change the way in which whether that changed the way people bought or sold the stock? That's questionable. It was a judgment made at the time. I wasn't there. Directors got comfortable, the auditor got comfortable. This board said, actually, directors shouldn't be valuing their assets. We should leave that to the independent valuer. Let the independent valuer decide what the market participant will do. And when we ask our valuer what that is, and their view is that's your current contract. The best guess of what a market participant would do would give a new resident the same contract you gave the last resident. And we've just stepped back and said, okay, that's what it is.
So what do you do with your auditors? Do you roll them too?
Well, they got comfortable at the time. We are, as we've announced last Monday, and I think it's independent of that. I wouldn't tie those two pieces together. Deloitte has been the auditor for the place forever. They have rotated their audit partners as they have to do under NZX rules, so that's fine. We just think it's time to refresh that. So we're in the middle of an audit tender now. We've committed to investors that won't be led out of Christchurch in the future. There's a real sense when I came on board, the investor feedback was it had become quite a Christchurch-centric business. Directors, management, lawyers, accountants, auditors.
Head office.
Yeah, and there was a sense that had become quite insular in that, and whether that was being as objective as it could be. So we've purposefully changed that quite significantly. We've changed the board. Every new board member we've hired, not Christchurch based. The management team, we have changed the CEO, the CFO, the head of treasury, the head of customers. So half the leadership team has.
That's 4.
Yep, that's half the leadership team has changed. We haven't replaced the CEO, but that's half changed as well. And we're running an audit RFP now, so that will definitely not be run out of Christchurch. We've told them you cannot run it out of Christchurch. Changed our lawyers. So, we are going through methodically saying, actually, it's time to put the line in the sand. We hear you, we will do the change.
You've brought the broom in, effectively.
We have, yeah. We were asked to, though. It was kind of, and it needed it. I think Not everything was broken though. I'm not sitting here throwing everybody before me under the bus. That's not right. There was a lot of good things happening. But there's a point in time, Madison, I think, where it's time for change, and that was definitely a time for change.
Another number, so 4 senior managers have left. Another number 5 is the amount of developments that you've effectively pulled the pin on. So 3 of those you have paused, build on, and 2 you've rolled back into the land development pipeline, correct?
We've got a land bank whereby we're putting 3 up for sale. Part of our issue around the development piece was, as we build these, the flywheel piece when I talked about the care, the retirement piece and the new village piece, when they go all together, that's old Ryman. The new development piece, as we're building these large, beautiful villages, you go to Miriam Corbin, you go to Keith Park, you go to Murray Helberg, you go to Australia, these beautiful big villages. What the model needs to work is when you build it and you introduce the new residents, that first occupational right effectively funds the development. And so therefore the future capital gains on it fall to equity holders. So that's the theory. And then that stopped for Ryman. We started building these massive big villages, and in the complexity of COVID, we didn't have that flywheel working. So what happened was a village might have cost us 300, we might have thought it was going to cost us 300 million. By the time we finished it was 400 million. When we sell down the occupational rights, it's 300 million still. So we've got 100 million of bank debt. And if you do that 10 times, that's $1 billion. So it doesn't take long for that to build up. And when you're half out of the ground, it's very hard to stop. Probably when we talk about the net present value. From that point in time, the net present value, you're better off to finish. It's like half built a house. What should you do?
Otherwise, it's a sunk cost, and then you actually lose millions of dollars.
Yeah,
Totally.
Trying to sell a half built, that's not easy to be done. So at that point in time, you are where you are. You're better to finish. And so, but as a result of that, we've accumulated debt. So again, we are where we are with that. We need to become profitable and pay that down. But the next spade in the ground, we cannot do. We need to be very disciplined on what we build.
And that discipline also looks like suspending the dividend, which previously, might I add, was being paid from no free operating cash flow. Is that a decision that you personally made?
Well, you never personally make those things. Are the board
but
decisions.
But you're the chair.
Yeah. But ultimately, at a board level, it's majority rule. So you shouldn't have a single director or a chair making those decisions. So the board took that decision. The view was that was financially prudent to do that. We were borrowing to do it. And also, one of the advantages of the retirement village model is that you don't pay a lot of tax, because essentially we don't sell anything. We sell licenses to occupy.
It's a great business to be in, Dan.
Yeah, so therefore paying a dividend out, you get taxed on that. So we write the cheque on your behalf to the government. So there's a kind of a tax leakage there, whereas my view of we're creating economic value, you're better to leave that money in the organisation rather than borrowing it to pay you, and by the way, giving some to the government. That just looks so inefficient to us that we've paused that for a couple of years, so we'll revisit that in 2 years' time.
And have that hopefully effectively flow through to the valuation of the share price, and equity holders feel that return in that way.
Yeah, well, ultimately we've taken the yield away from them, so we need to deliver capital growth, but we're not saying dividends off the table forever, but we need to generate earnings to be able to pay it. That's the only way you sustainably create a dividend. You've got to earn it to pay it, very simply.
You signalled in your recent result that there may be some more cost efficiencies to come. If you've pulled the pin on a number of those developments and you're going to be selling some land, then you obviously need less people to manage those projects.
Yes.
So where do you think you could cut those costs? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, sure. So we look at our business in a couple of ways. We look at what we do at a village, because ultimately we have to be resident centric. No resident, no Ryman. So you have to keep that person, mum and dad, that sounds old and woolly, but actually it's a very good doctrine. Is it good enough for mum and dad? And you have to have that at the centre. And the second piece you have to do is actually everything at the village is critically important. This is where we make our money. This is where we get paid to do the care. This is where they deliver us their weeklies and their DMF. This is where we get the capital gain. So that's the framework we have. And then outside of that, what are we doing? Are we adding value? Do we need to do that? Because ultimately everything detracts from that piece in terms of cost. So I think there'll be opportunity outside of the village primarily. We've gone to Australia, we've created overhead, we've got lots of regional models here. That's a work in progress, Madison. We need to steer at that. We've grown overhead faster than we've grown resident numbers. So a simple person like myself doing that metric, that doesn't feel right. So we've tasked the team to go back in and look at that.
19% increase alone to $172 million, I believe, in non-village costs.
Yes.
What do you want to see that down to?
We haven't guided to that, so lower is the answer. Yeah, we've set some internal targets. We haven't shared that externally yet, but yeah, we certainly see the need to right-size that piece as part of that whole equation.
You've spoken about the weekly fee and how that fixed option is clearly unsustainable going forward, but there's also the deferred management fee. Ryman charges one much lower than others on the market. Yours is 20%, Somerset's 25%, I hear other operators are around 30%. How are you thinking about that going forward and if it needs to change?
Sure, and I think you can't look at those things in isolation, which has been part of the kind of investor criticism of the old board saying, oh, let's just move to 30 for future residents, because you don't operate in a vacuum. So we think of those three, there's a couple of things. One, what is the price of the licence to occupy? And so we think our product is better than the majority of people in the market. Yes, you're going to get a very high-end product like a Helier or the one up in Parnell or what Winton's building. But that's quite rarefied air. That's not what we're chasing, and so you can look to achieve those things. So, but in our kind of compete, our product, we believe we are getting a higher price for, and that's important because that's the money that comes in. Then what do we charge is the deferred management fee, which is essentially the rental on that. We keep that at the end, so the resident knows what we're going to keep when they depart or move through. And then there's the weekly. So when we talk to a resident or a potential resident, they look at all of those three things. What's the price? How much are you going to take for rent? And what's my weekly fee? They're sitting there with their family. They've all had to sign a occupational right. It has to be reviewed by a lawyer, so it's not just sitting there with mum in the corner and handing over the pen. So it's quite a process. So they're getting an educated view, and ultimately they're comparing. They might look at Logan Campbell here. They might go down the road and look at something else. So you have to be competitive in that set, and so we need to look at all of those three things together. I think we can improve the combined package more so. The fixed weekly fee, I don't mind that concept as what you fix it at. Traditionally you'd fix that at today's rate to pay for everything and then inflate it a little bit and go, okay, that's the rate. So, if you're assuming they're going to be here for 7, 8, 9 years, you kind of have captured inflation. That's all good till your rates go up by 20% and your insurance goes up by 20%. You go, oh my God, what's happened here? So, and that has really outpaced over quite a period of time our weekly fees. In New Zealand, we've got 2,500 residents paying $110 a week, when if you move into Logan Campbell tomorrow, you're probably paying $220. So we've got a kind of an enormous drag through that, through people where inflation has gone well past. So we reset those quarterlies, but you can't go backwards. So, when you've got people staying here for 7, 8, 9 years on average, you get that wrong, you've got 8,000 people on a different rate than what you want it to be. So you can correct that though, because every year 1,000 new people come into our site. So the best time to change is tomorrow or today. So yes, we'll look at that as a package, and again we've got a group looking at that. What's the right way to go? Where's the elasticity? Because you don't want to lose occupancy. No resident, no Ryman. So you have to have a person paying the DMF, paying the weekly.
Is it true that you're trialling a bit of a different mix where an incoming resident can pay more in their upfront unit price and then less in their deferred management fee later on, and vice versa?
Yes, we've trialled that.
How's that going?
Mainly through when people, because it's a challenging property market, so people may think they're going to sell their house in Epsom, it's at $1 million, so they feel good about buying an Aura from us at $900,000 or $800,000, that's fine, it's a different quality of service, all those, so they're fine with that. They go to auction, doesn't clear. Oh, okay, that's not so good. Then they go through a sale and they might get $900,000. So they say, actually, I thought I had the $900,000, I don't want to put all of that into Aura because I have to pay my weeklies. So we might say, okay, on that basis, we might go from 900 to 850, but your DMF will now be 25 or 30.
And that effectively comes out of their inheritance later on?
Yes, yeah. So it's a kind of, you can't quite afford the price today, but we'll take higher rent from you in the meantime, such that, sounds quite clever, we're kind of NPV, we're kind of neutral to that. So we've found that has worked, but it's an interesting cohort. That's a cohort of people who haven't quite got enough money to come in. So
Are you seeing that more so now given the state of the housing market, and it's taking longer for people to sell their homes on the market too?
So last year across Australasia, we sold 1,500 occupational rights. So no one sold more than that. So the product's great, we are selling them. We only did that on 90 of the transactions. So what's that, 7% of the transactions? So we don't see that running away, but look, 2024 was supposed to be a great year. It's turning out not to be. When I first came on board in 2023, we were expecting interest rates to be declining, housing markets improving. That has not occurred. So 24 is feeling like 23, if not slightly tougher, actually. Unemployment's going up, which is what the Reserve Bank want to be able to drive down inflation, therefore drive down interest rates. So you can just see that playing out. So I think it'll be quite a sober next 6 months in New Zealand. So whether that has to pick up a little bit, I'm not sure. Yeah, it certainly feels generally tough in New Zealand at the moment if you are consumer facing.
I completely agree, and you're actually across many businesses as well. In fact, mentioning that, you are also involved in some others. Are you still involved with the warehouse?
Yes, I'm on the board of the warehouse, yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, because I was going to mix this in with asking about how your search for a current CEO here is going. You're also looking for one at the warehouse. It's a tough time to be looking for a good CEO, and there seems to be the case of disappearing CEOs across the New Zealand market at the moment. So specifically, what attributes are you looking for here, and how is the CEO executive search going across the market more generally?
Sure. It's interesting. It has been a coincidence of CEOs going, isn't it? I think a combination of boards being stronger, and ultimately the key thing for a board is to appoint, incentivise, and remove a CEO. If you don't get that right, I've never seen a board perform really well with a poor CEO. It just doesn't organisationally happen. I've seen it the other way around, but I haven't seen it just with without a great CEO. So that's a critical appointment. And there's also investor pressure as well, which is rightful, and you look at that for a period of time and ultimately have you got confidence that they're the right person or not. So boards ultimately have to make that decision. And so we made that decision in conjunction with Richard. So we're into a search. It's a kind of an interesting business because it's a collection of lots of different businesses. It's a care business, it's a retirement business, and it's a property development business.
Construction business.
Yeah. And on that side, well, it's a bit more than construction. I think it's development because you think about you're buying land, you're consenting. It's not like you are a Dominion constructor. You've kind of got the whole piece and you're selling it down. So it's a developer in our language. A key part is construction, but you're a developer. So you look at that and say, well, which part of that do you really need? So if you go and get a developer, not many developers have run a business with 7,500 people, which is kind of what we have. So are you a visible leader? Can you inspire? All those types of things. And on the care side, a lot of care is not for profit. Now, we have to be for profit. So otherwise we can't be sustainable. So trying to find somebody that looks like that and is deeply commercial will be our challenge. But we'll look in Australasia for that. We're hopeful, yeah. It's got a strong purpose, the organisation. You can be strong on the numbers, but you also have to have empathy. And ultimately, I think we do good things. But to be sustainable, we have to be financially sustainable.
If it came to it, would you stick around full time in the executive role?
No, a few people have kind of kindly asked would I do that, but I think I've done that. I've done the CEO role. I enjoy my move into governance. I've got some great board roles, and I look forward to being chair again. Yeah, but never waste an opportunity, Madison. We're leaning in, and hopefully we'll make it better by the time the person arrives to what it is today.
And will that person have to agree to yours and the board's strategy and everything that you've put in place?
It's interesting. A couple of people have raised it and said, well, that's going to be quite hard because you've kind of laid the path here. It's not like you bring in a CEO to create strategy. So I think that's something we'll have to work through. The board sees the ball quite clearly on this. We think we know where the issues are and what needs to change. If someone comes along, and investors are also agreeing, we agree that's where the changes need to be. If someone comes along and goes, actually, that's completely right, that would surprise us. Could they improve it? I fully hope so. But I don't think it's going to be a pivot away from those pieces because we know what's come undone in the flywheel. It's a matter of going back and getting those back working again.
Well, you have a very big job ahead of you, and as your colleague on the board, James Miller, would say, you've got a lot of wood to chop.
He loves that term.
He does love that saying. So I'll let you get on with it, and I really do appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Great. Nice to meet you, Madison. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for watching Markets with Madison, the New Zealand Herald show for interested investors. If you want to stay up to date with financial markets, click the subscribe button below and you can watch our other episodes here. Stay up to date with all the business news and numbers as they land on nzherald.co.nz.